Welcome to the Constantine Village Council, our regularly scheduled meeting tonight. February 3rd, 2025. And we're in the meeting at 7 o'clock p.m. We'd like to introduce our new clerk, Melissa Stemus. She's been hired to take over this spot here and keep us straight. So, if she says what once I mean twice, that's to be expected tonight. So we did start the meeting at 7 o'clock, and Melissa, would you call roll, please?
Denman.
Here.
Steers.
Here.
King.
Here.
Is it Lawrence?
Here.
Lawrence. Mathers G.
Here.
Mathers M.
Here.
Piper. Here. And Reimer.
Here, she's not on the council. Okay, so all the council members are here. Would you please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance to our flag? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On our agenda, item is point 2, you have an agenda. And that's the approval of our report tonight.
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Motion made by trustee Lawrence, supported by trustee Piper to approve the agenda as presented. Any questions? All in favor, please say yes. Yes. Those opposed, say no. That motion carries. Next are our minutes from our regular meeting of January 20, 2025.
I'll make a motion to accept the regular meeting minutes of 1/20/2025 as presented.
Second.
Did any of you keep track of the amount of the bills last time? I had a different number in my notes than what he had.
The total dollar amount?
Yeah, for the last meeting.
I got the 225 or the,
Yeah, that's two different.
I got 265,
That's what I.
316.
Yeah, there's three different.
I just would like to make a motion that we correct that exact number.
Oh, yeah, there's all different.
I got $265,316.86. 265, 316.86.
That's 225, 316.
You do?
Well, that's what's on.
Oh, I know. I'm sorry,
I don't have my last.
yeah, I'm wanting to make an amendment to the motion. Or to the
He
minutes.
just said it. He just gave you, what number did you have?
I had the same number you had, 265.
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
265. Well, ain't me. I wouldn't let my phone ring like that.
What was that, 265 what?
265, 365, 86.
I'll make a motion to amend the minutes before we vote on approval of the minutes. I need a second, Phil.
I'll say.
Any other comments on the payment of the bills, or the minutes from last week, or last meeting? We'll vote on the motion first. First one is a motion to change the dollar amount on the January 20, 2025 minutes to $265,000.
All of this was for, that was for the
265, 316, 86.
I was gonna say, yeah, then I'll change this, just, okay. Okay.
First, we'll move, any other changes to the regular meeting minutes? Okay, if not, let's vote on that. Motion is that we change the dollar amount from 225, 316.86 to 265, 316.86.
I'll second that.
And we have a roll call on that one.
Denman,
Denman, yeah.
Yes.
Steers,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Lawrence,
Yes.
Mathers, G,
Yeah.
Mathers, M,
Yes.
Piper.
Okay, and now we can vote on the regular meeting minutes. Lawrence and Mathers, first and second. Any questions on the regular meeting minutes other than this? Okay, all in favor of the minutes as adjusted, please say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda, payment of bills, pages 5 through 25. Unfortunately, we don't have Mr. Honeysett or our treasurer with us tonight to answer questions, but we can do the best we can.
I have a question on page 5. It says, owner training, $5,400. What is owner training? I thought we owned it, and none of us have been trained, so. I mean, the village owns it.
It's not on this bill, though.
Huh?
It's not on this bill.
It's right there.
Yeah, it's right
We're
over.
not paying bill anything at this time.
I don't see it either, where is it?
Page 5.
1, 2, 3, 4,
That's
5
the-
from the bottom, but we're
Oh,
not.
That's the contracted amount, it's not the current billing.
But what is it?
They're gonna say general,
Problem.
takeover.
I think it's once it's all completed, they've allocated that amount of money to
Train center.
help us understand how to run the plant.
Cause they got, underneath they got startup, $7,700. Alright,
But 0% complete right now. on the
yeah, I know that, I just wondered what it was.
The startup,
Doesn't make-
I would be curious about, what is
Doesn't make sense.
5% startup?
They always keep a 5%, what is it called? Contingency?
Contingency.
Contingencies, usually.
Then why didn't they do it on owner training? They always keep it like that, that's the only one zero. I'll bring it up when he's here, but
I don't know how to turn my phone on.
We're outside.
Representative Tim Walber.
you getting promoted?
Okay, any more comments on the bills or questions?
I do.
Yes,
On page 5. No, page 6 and 26. They look like they're exactly the same. Invoice number is the same. I looked through all the numbers, everything matches up, so hopefully we're not getting billed twice. 26?
Yeah, we're, page 6, what's
Six.
the second one?
And 25.
Probably the new clerk, just give us fire. Probably the new clerk, she will fire.
Wait a minute.
Thank you much. In
They're done. Somebody needs a new car.
fact, I had another one I looked at, said, see page 25, duplicate.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's not in our total. Don't know for sure exactly what the total was. I added the two up, what I thought it should be. Should be 17,517 without the duplicate for police.
That's the same number, same invoice number and everything. Yeah. Okay, so what,
Well, got a different invoice number, it's got a different date. Upper right corners.
Five,
Six and 25.
I'm sorry, 6 and 25. Yeah, they got the same, I'm sorry, my fault. They got the same, my fault. I was looking at 5.
Yeah, some of them do have 2 invoice numbers, not all of them.
There's 2 different invoices, you're
Yeah.
right.
right, two different invoices, but two of them are the same.
Yeah.
Five or six and five.
Page 6 and page 25 are identical.
Not in all the pamphlets.
Well, it isn't ours, and they're the ones that count.
These are different, yeah, these are different.
You're saying 6 and 25 are different than yours?
Yeah,
Hers.
mine are there's 2, mine are like yours, they're not identical. They're different invoice
Yeah,
numbers.
mine are the same. What are yours? Are yours the same?
Yes.
We're talking page
6 and
six
25 are.
Page 6.
and 25.
Bring them up here.
Page, well, 6 and 5 are identical.
No, 6 and 5 are different.
Yeah, it's
Right.
30 and
If
30.
you look at 6 and 25,
Okay.
they're identical. You got what
Now
you,
this one
are you the same as
Mine
yours?
are different.
Invoice number 72249, January 7th.
And that would be 49, that would be the same as 6, right?
Yep.
So
Six.
5 is different.
Five is different.
Yeah, 5's different.
And that's gonna be the same as 49.
Okay.
So which one? Just
Yeah.
pay them both?
Well, that's why we're asking.
Yeah, we don't pay all bargain, yeah.
I mean, we'll pay 5 and 6, but not 25. I'm assuming.
Okay, with the exception of that one, what are the, any other questions on the bills?
Why do they group the projects together?
Projects?
On project number, you have 841031 and 032. The same police, just at the top on the project numbers on all of them. But they have 2 projects combined as one, essentially.
Oh, I see what you mean.
There's the reason.
I just don't know that reason.
Can we vote to pay the bills if we don't know 25 and 6 are being double?
You said, can we vote to pay them? I mean, we can vote to pay them and correct it later, or we
With
can,
that.
or we can delete it.
I was gonna say all except for 26 or page 6. We don't wanna vote to pay both of them.
With the exception of Jody.
Right.
Yeah, do you want to do it?
So if it's done,
Usually when we do that, we don't get a response, so we need to get a response this time.
Jody back from vacation.
She's ill.
So do we have a total?
The total was the original total was 535, 586.96.
That's what I had.
Okay, and that included your regular bills and this. I think Caleb had a good idea to approve the original amount of 535, 586.96 with stipulation that we check into it before we pay, and adjust it if necessary.
Cause this 535, 586 that I had is not with page 25.
Oh, that's true, mine isn't either. Good point.
I didn't have that.
So I guess it's just a error.
Okay, yeah.
It's just a typo, they put it in twice by accident. New clerk? There we go.
She does.
So the total is,
Sorry, you're in favors, I gotta be mean.
That's all right, I'll take it, I guess.
I'll be like constantine.
I'm sorry.
Can we just make a note and when they're here, they can answer it?
yeah,
Okay,
I think
They never answer me.
that way you got a good flow.
we can make them answer it.
Okay, any other questions? It's the first time that's ever happened, that's a good catch. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I guess we need to check more often.
I always check them, but. All right, I'll make a motion that we pay the bills in the amount of $535,586.96. And with a stipulation that we find out why page 25 was included in the packet. And that is not part of what we're paying, so.
For a second?
I'll second that.
The original motion by Kathy Piper to pay the bills in the amount of $535,586.96. It's a stipulation that we check on the page 25 amount. I'm sure that should be there. Second by Caleb Denton. Any further questions or comments? Bills, we would call them.
Denman,
Yes.
Steers,
Yes.
King,
Yes,
Lawrence,
Yes.
G. Mathers,
Yes.
M. Mathers,
Yes.
Piper.
Yes.
Okay. Motion is approved. Thank you.
Gary,
Yes, sir.
you need to tell her she can't call the roll the same every time, she's gonna skip a name.
Oh,
Thank you.
I rule it.
I thank you.
okay.
You're not supposed to call them in the same order, so people can, you're supposed to change it every time.
He's ready to start one over. Item number 5 is public comment. And this is where we welcome anyone from the audience that wishes to address council on anything that's not on the remainder of the agenda here. And the only thing we have is our audit report and this neighborhood grant program. Anyone else is welcome, but we ask that you go to the podium, state your name and address if you're a village resident or not. We do have a 3-minute limit on all
I know,
comments.
Well, there are people in the audience that haven't.
I know. The bell goes off. I wasn't here last week, and I wish I had been for the creamery. And I can't understand why they get a 50% abatement on their taxes, even the difference between 10 and 12 years. Anybody sitting in this room knows that they're not going to move with the new sewer and the new ethanol plant. Why are we giving them a 50% tax break when the taxes and everything gets raised? They're all gonna come back on us. That's all I have to say. I don't understand it. Three people understood the situation and the rest of them went for it. And you're supposed to be working for us, not for them, and we're not getting, I don't understand it.
I'll state my opinion real quick.
I
They
know you are.
they are as much us as us. I mean, even though they're a larger outfit, but they're still part of the
We're not
village
getting a
here.
50%
Okay, I'm
break on our
talking now.
taxes.
I'm answering you, unless are you finished? Okay, thank you. And it was felt by the majority, slim majority of the people, that it was good for the village and that we would discourage other companies from improving, other companies from coming into town, that type of thing. It was felt that MMPA was always been a good customer, a good citizen. So the majority of the members thought it was worth it. And also you gotta remember is that it's only on 50% of the income that we get the rest of it right from the get-go. So, but it is a reduction, it is, but that's something that's in the, and I don't know that we ever refused to give someone an industry anything to ask for one. I've been on a long time, Todd, you were before me, I don't know whether you remembered anybody.
I'm gonna reiterate if I have the floor, and it's not part of my 3 minutes, please.
I was done anyhow, so now we'll go with Todd Whittick and his 3 minutes. Thank you. In addition to what you wanted to say.
I mentioned last time I was here at the public hearing, Owens, Illinois came to us for a 12-year abatement, and we give them the 50%. And when they built the building, they went to the state and took a bite out of our part of the apple too. So, just to reiterate for those people that don't know. Don King brought up money sources, which I thought was pretty paramount. And Cameron Brown was senator at the time. I happened to be at the Capitol, and he wanted me to contact Don Beavers. I don't think that you were quite here yet. Gary, looking in the room, you're the only one here. Cisco, we were bargaining with Cisco to relocate here or to build a plant, and we were in competition with Plymouth, Indiana. Our hedge is that they needed 5.86 acres and we had 2.5 in the village, industrial park. So we went to the farmer and he didn't want money for his property. He wanted 2-for-1 exchange. Now, I told Don Beavers, we'll solve Walmart's problem. We'll offer him the property right outside here next to, what was it, DeKalb at the time. Well, and they ended up 425 in the property, is that right? Through Fabius Township?
They had to for water and
Right.
sewer.
So I'm just saying this for your benefit because of our experience, or my experience, and you were here, Gary. I have a few of those documents that I located over the last week. So if anyone's interested, I would be more than happy to provide those.
I was here, but your memory's a lot better than mine. I'll
It
say
gets me
that.
in trouble, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Debbie? Debbie Painter?
Why would I introduce myself? You just did. Okay,
What's your name?
Debbie Kainer. Okay,
Address?
just a couple really quick. One, when it comes to the ethanol plant, is there going to be any monitoring of pollutants? I've done a lot of work researching stuff like that, and it could be quite hazardous. So will we have some sort of protection against any problems, spillage, air, whatever?
It has been discussed, yes.
Because I haven't been to the
So we-
meetings, that's why we've decided to start coming.
I'm not sure that the village is going to do it, or they're going to do it internally, but we'll.
Well, internally, we know how that works. Secondly, with the pot guy coming in and wanting to take the license, I sent you all letters, at least most of you, I wrote a letter out the other day. Is he the same, part of the same group that wanted to buy that building the first time? No. No, okay. Now, if you saw by what I wrote, he operates under various LLCs. And then in Bay City, they rejected his applications. The village ended up voting for it. The mayor ended up overriding it. So the question is, will the council be looking into why this guy, first of all, uses multiple LLCs and why it was rejected, why his applications are being rejected in other places before we bring in something like, because I'm not against pot facilities, just has to be well monitored.
He presented the normal application that we've all, marijuana facilities have,
Mhm.
I believe, and there was discussion at the time, questions asked and everything. That particular question didn't come up, but
Yeah, because I read the minutes and I don't always see these details, so,
Yeah.
I sat at my computer and it's not that hard to Google.
I don't know if you know exactly how it's being, the Atlas
Mhm.
Cannabis downtown, these people are purchasing his license
Mhm.
because of the space is too small, so they're moving it there. This space will be their office,
Okay, so
administrative, so they remodel the.
the other one is as a uses facility, but
It's
isn't
a
it like a
dispensary.
liquor license, isn't it not, like a liquor license, isn't it usually reviewed if a new purchaser is going to have it rather than just, here you go, no questions
The
asked?
downtown business administration was supposed to meet with them this week. I talked with Dan Sorensen. I haven't talked to him since. That-
DDA,
Yeah,
yeah, they approved it.
Okay.
They're the ones-
it was just asked if we would be willing to convert the license from one owner to a different, if I'm.
Yeah.
Like I said, my main red flag was why it's so many LLCs and why is he being rejected other places and why are we saying yes? But that's just, yeah. Thank you.
Anyone else? Address council. Okay, seeing no one, we'll close that particular item in their agenda and Move on to visitor presentations. Anybody have a presentation? It wasn't told to me ahead of time, so I'm assuming not. Okay, unfinished business, we have none from the last meeting. New business. The first item is letter A, audit report. And gentleman here from Cambridge and Company is here to present our report.
Good evening. My name is Joe Brillen from Village of Company, and I thank the council for the opportunity to be here tonight. And during the audit process, we received a set of financial statements from the village, and we went through and we confirmed and verified the numbers. We worked with the state of Michigan, various financial institutions, the county, to make sure that the numbers that were provided to us are verifiable and accurate. And what matters more than anything else can be found on page 1 of the audit report. And the second paragraph down is where we include our opinion on your financial statements. We wrote, in our opinion, that financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the village as of March 31st, 2024. This is the highest level of an opinion that we can provide in your financial statements. Currently, the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants refers to it as being an unmodified opinion, but I would think of it as being a clean opinion on financials. It means that your internal controls are effectively designed and properly operating to make sure that the council is receiving accurate, timely, and verifiable financial statements. It means something to have a clean opinion on your financial statements, but at the same time, it always should be the village's goal to have a clean opinion on your financials. This is roughly a 70-page report. I'm not going to go through all 70 pages. Hopefully that's not too upsetting to anyone. I'm going to cover the highlights. If you go to page 5, this is essentially the first page of the Cliff Note version of the audit report, referred to as management's discussion and analysis. This section is useful because you get some financial highlights. You can see 2-year comparative information to get an idea for some of the trends that your finances are showing. And then there's some narrative explaining reasons for the changes in your numbers during the past 2 years. So that first bullet point is in the financial highlights section, shows that theoretically, if the village sold all of its assets and paid all of its liabilities, there would be $6,379,962 left over, referred to as net position. It's a theoretical number, of course, but the village doesn't intend to do that. But what does matter is the direction that number is going. And if you continue on to the second bullet point down, you can see the total revenues recognized by the village came in at $5,168,374. Total expenses came in at $4.5 million, and there was an increase in net position of $648,978. So if a reader of the financial statements asks, is the village better off financially at March 31st, 2024 compared to March 31st, 2023? The answer is yes, by roughly $648,000. So the financial condition is improving. That is on the long-term basis of accounting, so we're depreciating your infrastructure. We're recognizing long-term liabilities, things of that nature. The last 2 bullet points are looking at the village's immediate resources compared to your immediate obligations. And we can see that the third bullet point shows total governmental fund balance came in at $2.6 million. So we look across all the funds of the village, your general fund, your major local street funds primarily, $2.6 million is your total fund balance. Across those funds, that was an increase of $228,000 during the course of the year. So when we're talking fund balance, it's immediate resources. When we see that there's an increase in fund balance, it means the cash into the village exceeded the cash out for roughly $228,000 during the year. And then the last bullet point shows the general fund. In the unassigned fund balance in your general fund. Unassigned fund balance is the most important element of fund balance. That's how much the village has to cover the day-to-day costs for running the village. You can use that for wages, utilities, things of that nature. You have $1,228,635 as of March 31st, 2024. And if we divide that number by your annual general fund expenditures, you're about 80% funded. So you've got almost 10 months worth of reserves sitting in your unassigned fund balance. Not too much, not too little. It's a very healthy financial position as of March 31st. If you go to page 8, we're going to look at the comparative assets and liabilities for the past 2 years of the village. Just a few rows I wanted to point out here. It's always nice to see how your cash is doing. And if you go all the way to the very last two columns, 2023, 2024, you can see that your cash and investments decreased from $2.57 million down to about $2.17 million, roughly a $400,000 decrease. The biggest reason for that being is at the end of the year, the village was waiting for $1 million worth of bond proceeds to come in from USDA. So they did get reconciled in shortly thereafter, the end of the fiscal year. If you look at your capital assets, which is about half a dozen rows down in the non-current assets section, you can see that your total capital assets increased from $3.7 million up to just under $9 million. That's all the investment that was happening in your sewer system, which was ongoing as of March 31st. And we're going to continue to see that number increase as the project continues forward. And then in order to cover the cost of that, of the sewer project, if you look about 3/4 of the way down the page in the non-current liabilities section, you can see the long-term debt increased. March 31st, 2023, you just had $1 million of bonds outstanding. That number increased up to $5,065,757. Those are the USDA bonds that were outstanding as of March 31st. And we're going to continue to see that number go up again as the construction continues on the sewer system. If you turn one more page to page 9, we get a look at the comparative revenues and expenses for the past 2 years of the village. Just a couple rows I wanted to point out here. If you go to the total revenues, roughly halfway down the page, you can see that total revenues increased from $4.66 million up to $5,168,374. Two big items drove that increase: the ambulance and public safety millage generated about $225,000 of additional revenues. In addition to that, the ARPA funds generated roughly $160,000 of additional funding during the course of fiscal '24. And then if you look 4 rows up and bottom, the total expenses increased from $3.77 million up to about $4.5 million. Biggest change being the additional costs incurred in the sewer system. We see that very commonly with these USDA projects. These multi-million-dollar projects drive up utilities and wages, things of that nature. So it's not unusual to see an increase within the course of the construction phase of a project. If you go on to page 19, we get a look at the governmental funds. This shows the revenues and expenditures for the general fund, the major street fund. All the other funds of the village get wrapped into the third column there. And then we've got the total governmental funds. This is on the short-term basis of accounting, so we're showing cash in compared to cash out. The general fund, 3 rows up in the bottom, you can see that there was an increase in fund balance of just under $111,000 during the course of the year. So your general fund had a reasonable increase in fund balance during fiscal '24. And then if you go to the very last column, total governmental funds, had about a $227,596 increase in total fund balances. So your general fund did well. When we look at all the other funds aggregated together, they too had a reasonable increase in fund balance. If you go now all the way to page 48, I normally spend a lot more time on this with our local units that have defined benefit pension plans. This schedule shows the funding status of the village's defined benefit pension plans for each of the past 10 years. It looks like a typo. The very first column shows 2023, but this is based on the MERS actuarial evaluation, which is dated December 31st, 2023. And we use that number to populate the numbers in the village's 2024 audit report. So this shows that the total pension liability, in order for the village to fully fund its pension obligation to all the eligible participants over the next 30 or 40, 50 years, about $235,000 is going to be paid out. And the assets set aside to cover that liability as of December 31st, 2023, if you look about 3/4 of the way down, the planned fiduciary net position equaled $292,868. So when we take your total assets and subtract the total liability, you guys actually have a $57,000 net pension asset, and you are in very unique company. We work with about 275 local units in the state of Michigan. I would estimate fewer than 10 have a net pension asset. So this is unusual. It means that you guys have been staying ahead of funding your long-term defined benefit pension liability. And you actually have a surplus, which is a good thing, a $57,000 surplus. So just a sign that you guys have been prudent in setting aside funds to make sure you cover that long-term liability. Most of our local units are about 75% funded. You guys are more than 100%. So very healthy financial position. Just a couple more pages. If you go all the way to page 54, this shows the total federal expenditures incurred by the village during fiscal '24. And the top section is really what is driving the need for the village to receive a federal single audit report. This shows the USDA bonds received during the course of fiscal '24 equal $5,068,757. Because the village received and expended more than $750,000 of federal awards, you have to have a federal single audit conducted in addition to your standard financial statement audit report. So we went through, the feds have a half a dozen different compliance requirements that we are required to test to make sure the village is properly bidding and paying and verifying that those funds are being received and expended appropriately in accordance with all those federal compliance requirements. If you go to page 62, we actually provide two opinions on these financial statements. The very top row shows that the financial statements we provided an unmodified or a clean opinion. Halfway down the page, the opinion that we provided on your federal awards, the auditor's report issued on compliance for your major programs. So again, a half a dozen different compliance requirements we tested. We found there that the village did receive and expend those funds in a manner that complies with all the federal requirements. So we issued a second unmodified or clean opinion on the financial statement. So all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. It certainly helps to have, USDA pays very close attention to those federal funds, as does the engineer. So there's three levels of review happening on all those federal dollars to make sure they're being received and expended correctly. In addition to good record keeping, Jody did a very good job and had everything very well laid out for us to take a look at those federal awards and accordingly clean opinion on the federal awards as well. Those are the highlights that I've got, but I'm certainly happy to take any further questions council might have.
I have a question. On
Sure.
page 10, where it's the governmental funds, what exactly can we spend that on?
It depends on what fund it's held within. So the general fund has the least amount of constraint. So I talked about the unassigned fund balance in your general fund. You can use that for, if you have a local match, the village gets an opportunity for $100,000, I'm hypothetically throwing out numbers, $100,000 grant. In order to get that $100,000 grant, the village needs to kick in $50,000. To get the other $100,000, you can use your unassigned fund balance for that. You can use unassigned fund balance for capital outlay. If there's a project that needs to happen and you need some resources to cover whatever that capital project might be, you can use it on unassigned fund balance for that. You can use it for wages, utilities, all those day-to-day costs or one-time capital expenditures. You can use unassigned fund balance for. The major street fund, however, any fund balance in your major streets or local street funds, you've got to use those for street repair and maintenance costs. So it depends what fund has the fund balance. If it's a special revenue fund, you have to use it for a very specific purpose.
So like we need new electric water meters.
Mhm.
It's gonna cost a lot.
Sure.
So we could take some of that out of that, or?
That's something that council could consider. Typically, that would get funded from the water fund.
Now, if the water fund doesn't have any.
Those are good conversations to have with the engineer. Just talk about, what are the available resources, what are the funding options. I'm certainly happy to participate in those types of decisions, or at least to offer recommendations. Typically, my clients look for a way to get that funded by the water fund and not mix general fund, but it doesn't mean that you can't do that.
And then on page 12, I had, page 12, the variance, where it was the final budget, actual, and the variance.
only identified I guess, the glass is half empty, sort of. We're only identifying the departments that went over budget. We aren't showing all the departments that came in under budget. And the reason for that, those are the standards that require us to publish anything that went over budget, within a given department.
With a fire and EMS, why would that be $251,000 over budget? Was that a truck that was purchased or something?
It very well could have been a one-time purchase that,
We had to pay them about that much, didn't we,
For a truck?
for a truck? Am I thinking of the town?
most of the time what happens is we have a client that goes through and they do their final amended budget, in March, and then in April, a large invoice shows up, and they're like, oh, okay, well, we just went over budget because of an invoice that our vendor was late sending to us. We had to pay it. It belonged in the previous fiscal year, and now we went over budget because of it. So that's the number one culprit for budget variances. And I'm not sure if that's the case here, but, I can certainly look into that if it would be helpful to do so.
I'm just curious why
Sure.
these are over budget.
Yeah, cause we haven't had a clerk or a treasurer for how long, and we're
Yeah, treasure.
We've had
Oh,
a
we've had a
treasurer.
treasurer.
Yeah.
but no clerk,
Well, Caleb was for a while and then.
About 5 months.
about 5 months.
And then
But
We're still $208 over budget.
we had to be over budget on a frickin' sewer breaks, a pipe breaking every week. They over, that's in the sewer fund, right?
The sewer fund, it's a proprietary fund, and we don't do disclosures on business type funds. So anything in the water and sewer fund, you guys would still see it on your internal reports, but it wouldn't get reflected in an audit report.
Would street maintenance be considered, snow plowing, or is that just,
Yeah, it could be a variety, probably not, winter maintenance is typically reflected in a separate department.
yeah, cause I see snow removal. And then page 5, bullet point 4, 80% of the general fund is used up already. With fully completed of the wastewater plant, what would that put us at? Is that predictable, or?
Sorry, you said page 5?
Yep.
Fourth bullet point?
Yep.
So, we're focusing just on the general fund here. So, are you talking about the,
The unassigned fund balance, that's anything, right?
yes,
So, as you said, we still have bills for the wastewater plant coming in.
mhm.
Upon full construction and completion of that plant, where does that put our unassigned
So,
balance?
the sewer construction project is being funded entirely with USDA bonds. So, the bonds, $20 million of bonds are, well, $20 million of expenses are incurred. The village cuts the check. At the same time that the check is cut, the USDA funds that with bonds. So it doesn't have any impact on your unassigned fund balance. And what USDA is going to do is make sure that your rates are set to a level so that over the course of the next 40 years, when those bond payments come due, you're charging enough to service that debt. So we're talking about two different funds. This is solely your general fund. So when we've got activity in your sewer fund, it's not gonna have an impact on your unassigned fund balance in the general fund. So that number is independent and won't be impacted by the sewer fund activities.
I don't know if you can answer this or not. Just something I've been thinking about is, once our sewer fund is, or our sewer is up and running,
Mhm.
and we still have to pay labor, maintenance, and all that kind of stuff, our bills that we have to pay, the village residents have to pay,
Mhm.
I'm sure you've probably seen those in the reports.
Mhm.
In long term, is that gonna be sufficient?
That was basically what I was trying
Trying
to
to say.
ask,
Yes.
Sure. So auditors look backwards, engineers look forward. And so the engineers are gonna be the ones who are most best able to answer that question. Odds are USDA will provide the village with free rate studies to make sure that you are charging enough so that you can service your debt. Not only service your debt, but they also have ongoing reserve requirements that will require the village to set aside X dollars every quarter, put it into a repair, replacement, and improvement account, so that you're building that up, because in years 1 through 10, you're not gonna be spending anything on repairs, replacement and improvements, or it'll be minimal anyway.
I remember we had to have $500,000 set aside for repairs. That was part of the increase in the water and sewer rates.
I thought that was just for additional,
When we increased the water and the sewer, that was built into it, if I remember right.
I know we had to.
Over time, we had to have so much money in the
It almost sounds like we have to keep adjusting the rate and charge citizens to cover those funds.
Well, it's supposed to be
There's-
already in
There's
there.
gonna be another increase. We've already had one, there's gonna be another one. That's supposed to cover all of it.
And the purpose is, what USDA wants to know is, are these local units who have these federal funds, are they setting aside enough dollars in years 1 through 10 to cover the repair costs that's gonna happen years 11 through 40? So they're trying to make sure local units are being proactive in setting aside those funds, so that we don't get, or that the local units don't get to year 25 and there's no money available to cover the significant increase in repairs, in repair costs.
You know, like the pipe breaking once a week. Or,
Sure.
yeah. They didn't do that in the 90s, obviously.
Any other comments, questions? How long was your audit out here?
What's that?
How long of time did you actually spend at the office here, or is it by mail?
We were here a couple of different times, I think 2-3 days the first time, and I was here for 1 day, the second time to do the federal piece of the audit.
Any other questions from trustees?
Just a lot to look at and take in.
Yeah.
You can understand half of it, maybe.
Explain.
I'm gonna
Or
find out
you
why.
did a good job explaining that, I think.
I know that was
Here's
some
the
point.
points.
What matters.
If there's questions along, throughout the year, you guys know how to get a hold of us, I'm happy to take those questions.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I could not see, I got the DM here and I was like, I can't do this anymore.
You weren't coming from Grand Rapids, were you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's halfway here.
I was halfway here and I was like,
Thank you.
thank you.
I know normally we make a motion to accept and file the audit report as presented, but I want a chance to look at it for a couple weeks and do it at the next meeting.
I read through the whole thing and didn't understand half of it, so now I'm doing it right now. I mean, it makes, some of it makes sense, but some of
It
it's,
surprised me.
gotta go to college and understand, I guess.
Read it, show it again, I don't know if I understand.
If you had to give us a letter grade, what would it be?
I think you guys would be.
A B?
Why not an A? No, just,
I would say the A is, you have to be careful with an A, because sometimes it's a double-edged sword. I have clients that have over 100% fund balance sitting in there unassigned, within their general fund, which means they've got a little bit more reserves, a little bit more of a safety net, sitting in their general fund. But then, now, we've got to ask the question, are we charging residents too much for taxes when you get to that point? You're not quite to that point. So that's where I would say, once you're north of 100%, then you can start thinking about those types of decisions. Or what does our 5-year outlook look like for capital projects? What's the capital outlay? In addition to the sewer project, what other types of projects do we have? How much funding do we have sitting in our general fund and our capital improvement funds to cover those types of projects? I think having your finger on the pulse of all of those additional projects, in addition to balancing the current year budget, is really what, to me, gets my clients to the next level. You guys do a very good job of monitoring, you ask a lot of good questions. You don't just rubber stamp. A lot of my clients, they show up, the first time they look at the council pack is 3 minutes before the meeting, and they don't even know what's in it. You guys ask good, thorough questions, you do your homework. So you do a lot of good things, for sure. I would say that's really the difference, B's good. But I think kind of more long-term, focusing on what are, the 5-10 year capital project needs of the village, and continuing to really maintain a very healthy, unassigned fund balance in your general fund is the key.
So if we had future abatements, could you advise us on that?
Typically, we leave that up to the council to make those types of decisions. I suppose that if the council wanted some help forecasting what this is going to do to our budget over the next 5, 10, 15 years, we could provide some insight with that type of analysis.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, if we're not gonna understand any more than we do now, we might as well make a motion, and I'll make a motion that we accept and file the audit for fiscal year 2023-24 as prepared by Gay Ridge Company CPAs.
I'll support that. I second that, actually.
King,
Yes.
Lawrence,
Yes.
Jay Mathers,
Yes.
M. Mathers,
Yes.
Piper,
Yes.
Steers,
Yes.
Denman.
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Thank you for your service, we appreciate it.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us down to item B, and I believe you're all ready to explain what it is that
Yep.
you want to talk to us about, okay?
First off, I'm Clayton Wazinski. I am your St. Joe County Housing Coordinator, which basically means anything and everything to try to help get more housing in St. Joe County and help keep housing in St. Joe County. So any project or ideas or thoughts around that area, that's an opportunity for me to come in and help facilitate or literally coordinate those types of projects. I'm not a builder, I'm not any specific job other than just trying to help keep the people that are trying to do stuff, the opportunities that are coming out, and help get those through the pipeline. One of the things that came up is a year and a half ago, I joined the state on a committee level and was part of the housing ecosystem subcommittee. Basically, how do we get state and federal funds down to rural, down to us here in St. Joe County? And one of the things that I was able to do on that team was help create an opportunity that helps fill the gaps on why we don't usually get certain grants or funding. A lot of those are often limited because of the lack of admin. When you have a small community like Constantine, you're limited on how many people or how much hours you can put towards what essentially is another full-time position administering a grant, especially when you get in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. What I'm going to do tonight, real quick, I know it's the end here, so I won't try to keep anybody, but what I want to do is give you a brief overview, kind of go through step by step a little bit of what to expect, or to understand when it comes to the My Neighborhood CDBG, which is the Community Development Block Grant. There's several different ways it can be worked out and how it can be utilized. One of the things that I've been working on aggressively for the last 5 months is how do we get that at the local level and what hurdles do we need to overcome to get there. One of the things that I'm recommending is that the Village of Constantine apply for the My Neighborhood CDBG grant. On the low side, I expect $200,000. On the high side, I expect $400,000 to go towards renovation of the existing housing stock. This would be qualified through low and medium income households. But I'll get ahead of myself. I'll go through the slides kind of one by one, and that'll give you a good outline for it. And then I'm absolutely more than happy to go through and answer questions and also set up follow-up opportunities. I did send the program that I'm going through real quick to this village manager, and so you have access to this. You can easily get a copy of this after we're done. So this is a MISHDA, which is the Michigan State Housing Development Authority fund that's set aside to address the housing crisis in the state of Michigan. Funding sources, the My Neighborhood is a blend of state and federal funds that are made available, like I said, in reference to not just our housing crisis, but then the housing plan that was set that I helped create at the state level. So the Housing Community Development Funds, the HCDF, and the CDBG, that's the Community Development Block Grant that I mentioned. So how does it work? The purpose is to fund activities that align with the state housing plan, and basically get local funds to local entities here. There is a regional strategy. The state is broken up into several different regions. We are in Region J, which makes up the 7 counties in the lower side of the state. So that's over to Berrien, and then us right in the middle, and then all the touching counties. There is an application process that you have to do. The applicants propose housing activities. Successful proposals are matched with either state or federal funding. Although what I'm proposing is not a match fund, it's a straight fund, meaning you don't have to pay anything to get these amounts. If you wanted to go over 400, they would do matching funds, but I'm not proposing that at this time. The federal CDBG funds are available to 9 non-entitled local governments. For us, down in our region, that means this money can't go to Kalamazoo, it can't go to Portage, it can't go to Dowagiac, it can't go to Benton Harbor, because they receive CDBG funds separate from this opportunity. And then local government guarantees may procure other partners to help them implement their projects, including nonprofits and developers. One of the things that I'm working on, and I believe we have it this close to being processed, is the Sturgis Area Community Foundation, who also has the Constantine Community Foundation as a subsidiary, is confident that they should be able to fund any gaps in the reimbursement process so that you don't have to pay anything out while you're waiting for the state to write the check back to you. So creating a fund gap, they're willing to fill that at 0 interest and basically be a pass-through so that Constantine isn't writing checks until they have money in the bank from the state. When I said as low as 200, as high as 400, until the application is submitted, it's hard to say what the village would technically be able to qualify for. There's the beginner level, which is 0 to 2 grants or development implemented by applicants. So basically it just says that depending on what the experience level of the village is at submitting, receiving, and processing grants, worst case scenario, that they can apply to up to 200. Best case scenario, without having to match anything, would be up to 400,000. So I'm recommending to apply for the intermediate level, which is the 400,000, with the idea that they can always say no and only offer the 200,000. I want to talk about the eligibility for the funds. As I said, it's only for non-entitled. Like I said, that excludes the aforementioned. We already went over that. So eligible activities, there are several other opportunities, and it can be broken up in a number of different ways on how these funds can be used. My recommendation is the homeowner rehab. The reason I recommend that option is because it's the fastest, easiest, lowest hanging fruit, meaning you don't have to provide a work order or a work list ahead of time of the application. You can apply, get granted the funds, And then you can go to your community, have them apply for specific activities that are already pre-approved, and the money can go towards that, versus trying to put together this whole big plan, this whole big program, submit it only to have it maybe or may not be received. If anybody explores the CDBG funds and they think they want to do something different with it, I would never be against you trying to spend it a different way. But it's taken me 5 months of going to several meetings and with the state and with other entities to really wrap my head around how this process is and how it works. And if you talk to anybody at state, chances are they have not put in that much time yet. So I feel very confident with this path of homeowner rehab. And I know, living in St. Joe County for 45 years, that there's always opportunity to fix up existing housing stock. And I think that's who we're gonna be able to help the most. Because those are the hardest to fund. So let me stay on track there and I'll cover some of that. But so the dollar amount that your residents can apply for is up to $40,000. So you're talking about being able to do the roofs, the furnace, efficiency updates, and things of that nature. Anything for them up to 10,000, there's no questions about it, like it's a straight, here's $10,000 towards these activities. Now, obviously, you're not writing them a check, but the idea is the work that's scheduled and approved is up to $10,000 with no questions asked. Anything between 10,000 and up to the 40,000, that would put a 5-year lien on the house with 0 interest, 0 payback, assuming they go the full 5 years. And what they're trying to do there is avoid you replacing the roof, your siding, and then turn around and selling the house that was updated. So the idea is this is for homeowners that are planning on staying in their home. Worst case scenario, if they turn around and sold their house, they would have to pay back what they got from the state and use towards the fund. So if you're planning on staying in your house, there's nothing you need to worry about. If it's anything under 10,000 as a resident, you don't need to worry about it. And as far as the participants or the people applying, they must provide proof of ownership, show that they have insurance on the home, verify their income, and they have to be current on their local and state taxes at the time of application. Some of the benefits to the local government or to the community demonstrates responsiveness. As a council, you get to say, hey, we are working with the state to bring state and federal funds back to the community to help take care of our residents. Cost avoidance, obviously, anytime you push off maintenance on a roof or furnace, sometimes those can turn into much bigger expenses. Energy efficiencies, a lot of the things that are proposed are already pre-approved. Those are gonna make a resident's local bills go down, whether that's heating, electric, whatever. And it preserves our housing stock, which I mentioned before. I don't know, you guys have lived here long enough that eventually you see the tarp on the roof, and then the worn out, maybe a second tarp before it eventually caves in and the house gets condemned, and then you're responsible for finding a way to demo the house or whatever. So this is the perfect opportunity to preserve that stock by stopping those big losses and people eventually giving their houses up and you being stuck with them, and being able to make those improvements before people lose their houses. Obviously, there's integrated housing strategies. Pairs well with whatever somebody else is already doing. If they're doing their home remodel and they know they can get the roof for free, obviously that's a huge advantage. As far as there is some wealth building involved, obviously most of us, our greatest asset in our column is our homes. And so helping keep that up to date, help improving that, obviously can help with that. And then we also have our seniors, anybody who's getting to the point where they can't maintenance their house or they're on a fixed income and they can't do some of these things. Obviously having a large purchase like a roof or a furnace makes a huge difference for them. And then neighborhood stability, obviously anytime you get some improvement, it improves all of it. So next steps would be to apply. And that's what I'm proposing, is that you guys would allow your village to submit an application to apply for these funds. It is a long, lengthy process, as you would imagine, although I will say that currently in this particular category that I'm outlining, they currently have $11 million that they cannot give away. Most of that is rollover from the last round, and if we don't spend it at some point, the state's gonna take it back. My goal is that if we start now, get through it, and spend it, that we could actually reapply again in October and potentially get another round of funding. So, I know that's a lot, and it's hard because like I said, I've been working on this at the state level for 1.5 years, and been deep studying this for 5 months. But I know you guys have questions. If you want me to answer those now, I'm more than happy to do that.
I have a question.
Yes.
So what about a landlord with a rental property?
So that, there is landlord update opportunities within the grant. I'm not recommending that. Again, I'm not saying you couldn't if you have the whereabouts and the resources to search out the best way to possibly do that. And once an administrator's been approved, then theoretically you could go down that route. I personally am not comfortable with that particular part of it, with the idea that I know it's a slower return on the process versus the direct to homeowners.
And then you did say that seniors can apply?
Yes, absolutely. So it would be, the fixes are on low to medium income, and I don't have those exact numbers, and I don't know how those correlate to people per household, but all that would be laid out in a simple flyer to the community where you'd be able to post it on the Facebook or at Village Hall, where anybody would be able to look at it and say, yes, this is me, yes, this is me, okay, yes, I can apply, and feel confident when they apply that they're gonna get it. And I would also recommend a list of activities that I know are already pre-approved. So again, you can look at the list and say, oh yeah, we need that, yeah, we need that, or it's not on there, and then potentially it could be added to the list. But the idea would be fast turnaround, high dollar expenses on the homes. Again, to spend it as quickly as possible, to reapply again later in the year.
What is the average length of this process?
Because a lot of people haven't done it, are you talking about per project or per grant?
For the city to do it and then for the process for an individual?
So the last conversation I had with Mishta, not only are they super aggressive and helpful in answering all my phone calls and all my emails pretty quick, they're eager to spend this because they're worried that it might go away if they don't. So
Worried our public government will spend it on roads.
so the idea is, they've been very responsive, and it's a newer program. We're only at the beginning of the second round, so there's not a lot of experience with it. But I do know the people that, Cass is our closest neighbor, the Village of Cass, and they were able to process theirs, and they're looking at a second round, so less than a year, I would say.
So we don't have a grant writer.
You do not have a grant writer that I know of.
No, we don't. I think we should have one, but
I think you would benefit from one as well.
yeah.
Where I would come in as the advantage to the coordinator, one, I've done all the work on the backside to answer the questions here, but two, I've also pulled at and looked at the resources you need to help make it possible. What I have is somebody from a group at the state level. They created a team that basically will actually sit down and go through the application with you and help you do it as a village. The last one we talked about, we thought it was about a 2-hour. So if they sat down with someone from staff here, they believe that they could submit that application probably within 2 hours.
Well, don't we have a new administrative assistant? Mark, that would be the person, right? to do it? Well, then tomorrow she can do the grant.
So also I would be there,
Right.
and I would be able to bring in state help. And I looked at the application, and maybe it's just because I've been working on this for a while, I feel like I could get 80 to 90% done in less than an hour personally if I was doing it myself. That being said, bringing in the state assistant that helped create it, I'm confident that that 2-hour window is very reasonable to process. Yeah,
It sounds like a good idea, we just need to find somebody to do it.
But
So-
you have no idea what in dollar amounts translates to low to medium income?
I mean, if you look at St. Joe County right now, that the median household income is between 52 and
I know.
You're not qualified.
between 52 and 54,000. I think that's as an individual household income. So obviously it expands if there's multiple people in the house. I don't have those correlations, and I don't know if they're doing at the county level or at the region level. That's why I don't have those exact numbers.
There's people in town that are under that, I'm sure. We have a lot of senior citizens too. We do.
And I did also send a Q&A, frequently asked questions, tomorrow, so you have access to those. The presentation that I went through, you have access to that. And
So when can we get started?
if you guys instruct your village to start the application, then they have your permission to go forward with it, and I'll be scheduling something with them as soon as possible.
Was that today you sent them? You sent that to them?
That was last week.
I don't wanna wait until the next meeting when Mark's here, so why don't we just, make a motion that we get started, because we have a person that can do it.
And we have help.
You good training
Correct.
opportunity
Yeah.
for,
And we have help.
somebody here.
So just to help.
They're basically gonna stand there and help and do it for her, just show her how to do it.
Not only that, the bigger part, or the bigger investment, which is why nobody's applying for it and why it's so intimidating, is because it's a full-time job to keep track of all of it, where it's going, which projects, this and that. This is one of the rare ones. It actually has an 18% admin fee separate from the dollar amounts. And so for 400,000, that equates out to about $72,000. So basically, as a village, you can bid it out to have somebody work on this. And the state is in the process of pulling a super team together, which is currently boarded by the CFO of Mishta and the MEDC president. Like, these are people that are on the board, so they're creating this team because that was the complaint that I had and some of us had at the local level, is we can't afford to take time out of our small staffs to facilitate this, to run it, to make sure it's being done right, to make sure we're hitting all of our deadlines, which is why you need an admin. Where that's typically in the 8 to 12% on the high side, they got this up to 18, and that includes, and that money can be used towards environmental, things like that, that have to get the ball rolling, in addition to that extra person who's gonna be accountable, or that team that's gonna be accountable for making sure you're hitting your deadlines, getting the monies in, and making sure they're done right.
So we can contract with
So,
Yeah.
win-win.
And anytime there's a next step, either I personally would be able to help walk the village through that next step, or the person internally, or if the admin's hired by then, they would be responsible for that.
I don't think we should wait like we usually do until the day before it's due to do it, so let's get it started now.
Is there any obligation to the village itself as a whole? I mean,
So, yes.
What's that?
Yeah, so it is a reimbursement process, and you can get advanced up to 25%. So if it's the full 400,000, you would get 100,000 on the front end to go towards projects in the first 180 days. What can happen is if you're doing projects quote-unquote too fast, then you're paying out as a village before you get reimbursed by the state, which the last time I talked to them, they said they think they can get that check out within 10 days of receiving invoice, which is unheard of at the state level. But again, they're so eager to get it back and get paid up. That being said, like I said, I'm working with, so worst case scenario, if you don't want anything to come out of the general fund to cover it while you're waiting for dollars back, you would just have to pace your projects and how much you can put out at a time, because you will have some upfront money. But working with the Constantine Area Community Foundation, who's a subsidiary of the Sturgis Area Community Foundation, they believe that they should have no problem covering any of those gaps between the 100 and the 300 to make sure that you're not out, because they don't want that to be the reason you're not going after these funds. And housing is in the top 3 priorities for the community foundation.
So basically, what you're saying is, if we get the grant, they give us the 100,000 up front, but we can pace ourselves to where we're doing the projects as we get the money, so we don't have to put the money in.
Theoretically, 100,000 at a time.
And that's what the
And that's if,
72,000 admin person would take care of, set the schedule. Makes sense to me.
Which then could be doubled or reapplied for in October.
I believe all the funds would have to be exhausted to reapply. That being said, October is when the next round opens, if it opens. We believe that it will. It would open in October, just like this last round opened in October. We're applying in
We don't
February.
have to apply in October, we can apply once we spend it and start over, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
And assuming there's funds there, assuming it gets renewed, at this point, there's absolutely enough funds for this round, there's still over $11 million current. As far as the next round, assuming they don't find a way to reallocate that, we would expect it to be there also.
sounds like a win-win to me. Maybe we can fix your sewer line. You know, maybe, you never know.
Yeah. Is the 11 million just for the region J, or is that?
Yes, 11 million is just our region, that's how much is left for our region.
Okay.
And why is all that money there? Because people are too intimidated by it.
Okay.
And I will say, the admin is outrageous. To follow through and process all this, it is too much. But with an 18% admin fee,
Can't beat it.
I almost created my own company just to bring people together to do that part of it, knowing that that's what's stopping people. And as I put that business plan together, then lo and behold, the state found a solution to their own problem, which is pay them to administer their grants.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Need a motion for?
Well, I make a motion that we apply for it. Is that what we need?
Okay, if you wanna do it tonight, formalize it a little bit better, I mean,
Well, I mean,
well, what,
I just know that we always wait until the day before something's due to have to decide, so I think we should get ahead of it. I make a motion that we do the MSHDA Rehabilitation Home Repair Grant, we apply for it. Start the process to apply for it.
I'll second
okay? You get it all written down,
Close.
close? Would you read it again for Gary then?
Oh, no,
Okay,
really?
done?
I make a motion that we apply, just look at, does she have it?
Mhm.
Yeah, that right there, we wanna apply for that.
Okay.
So it's right in front of you, it's easier
That's
to
fine,
read it
okay.
than for me to say it. We're testing you to see if you're gonna survive.
After lengthy discussion.
You're from Three Rivers, so, you know,
I didn't go to Three Rivers.
well, they screwed us on the sewer, we can't trust Three Rivers.
Maria's gonna vote before I tell them where I'm from.
Where are you from? You're
Although I will say that I did grow up and spend some years in Whispering Pond, so.
Of course, I'm always suspicious of these things, so I hate to
Yeah.
jump on anything this quickly without really looking at it.
Where's the money come from?
From the Mishta Housing Fund.
But where do they get it?
They probably took it from you.
You said
I mean,
it was federal funding.
Never show
It's
that
Michigan
6
taxpayers,
billion,
right?
Yeah.
$6
Well, the
billion
state
dollars.
Who knows how they
Conservation
shuffle the
of
cups, but
infrastructure.
basically,
A
the state has the money.
A couple of the residents did have a question or caught my eye very
If anybody,
briefly.
yeah,
Very briefly, you can ask something.
I'm,
Two things. We're not exempt. You're gonna go to White Pigeon, you're gonna go to Cullen, and so we're up against competition, and I like your thought process. And the last time that we had something similar, quasi, was in 1985 with Rick Combinator, and it was a successful program. I don't know if you remember any of that, but yes, just for variant, and Angie, you may remember it as well, but I don't think the rest of you were here.
so,
It was a successful program.
yeah,
And they did doors, they did furnaces, they, you know, and you mentioned the tarps, and we have those in town, please.
yeah, so I will address that very specifically. It is technically a competitive round, but at $11 million and the pace it's going, it's mathematically impossible for you not to get it. That being said,
We don't have a good history with getting grants.
because you don't have the resources to go after it, and you don't have the resources to process it.
Well,
And
that
this
way-
is built into the program.
How many other towns have signed up?
So, the first 4 that I plan on getting in the first quarter are the city of Three Rivers, because they have a grant writer. They've been very aggressive about moving forward with stuff. Sturgis, who has the Sturgis Neighborhood Program, who is aggressively pursuing it with a separate lead. And then the other 2 communities are Mendon and Constantine. Mendon, because we've been working with them on other projects for the last 6 months, and they knew about this 5 months ago. And so we're at the point where it was presented last month, and this month, they're gonna vote it through. They had a whole council change, I think 1 or 2 people stayed on, so they wanted to wait till after that before they went through, so I presented last month, and then they foreseeably will apply
Saved us for last.
later this month. And then with you guys, you actually had somebody on staff at one point who went to a couple of the presentations or a couple of the meetings, and that's why you're on the short list. And then because you're also have the community foundation, it also puts you on the short list. So the idea is easiest to work with, easiest access to, who has some pre-vested interest, either with already working with me, or already working with the foundation, or already have staff that can work on it.
Sounds like a win-win to me.
Yeah.
Constantine is under Sturgis's umbrella, or
For the
auspice,
community
if you will,
foundation.
under the foundation. If the rest of you don't know.
Especially if they're gonna give us 18% to
So
hire
then
someone
what
who's
would
gonna do the paperwork.
Will we be denied since it'll be like double dipping?
No, because the village is who's applying,
Okay.
so the municipality is the entity applying.
Any more questions? Debbie?
Maybe I misunderstood, because you just said that they're giving us 18%. Does that come out of the 100,000, or is that in and above that?
Separate, that's an additional to help cover the cost.
Yeah, it's clarified, thank
To
you.
have to pay somebody to take care of the paperwork and administer it.
Right, in my head, usually pay fee comes out of your initial.
And it does a lot of times,
I just thank you.
which is another problem we had at the state level, which is why we argued that for rural is, if we're paying 25% of our grant out just to have somebody administer it, that hurts the bottom line, so.
Well, it probably didn't hurt that they had $11 million to play with either.
And it was more, for sure.
Yeah.
Just a random question. Does the person who applies and does the applications pick the people, or would that have to come to the council for a discussion on who would get it?
So that would be set up with pre-qualifiers, so it wouldn't be a person per se, what it would be is a preset qualifications. And some of those recommendations would be based on the type of work that needs to be done. And then if there's something in the specific housing plan that targets an area, I don't know, do you guys have a separate housing plan? I'm guessing not. So we would utilize the county housing plan as the basis for what we're
Okay,
going for.
but that didn't answer my question. You said there's gonna be qualifications. So if that person qualifies for it, will that person who did the paperwork approve them, or would that have to go to the council to be like, okay, yeah, we're gonna allow this person to get that money? Do you understand what I'm
Yep.
asking?
Yeah, so what would happen is the admin and myself would work on creating the qualifying list, and we would recommend that to the council, and then you would review it and say, hey, yes, we do want to make sure this is a priority, or we'd rather this be a higher priority, and shift what the priority list is, and then basically it would be first come, first served that fit the criteria. Theoretically, that could be limited, changed based on priority. So it could be anybody who applies that's applying for roofs is automatically first on the list. Anybody who's applying for windows, like,
So let's say he applies, I apply, and like 7 of the people in the audience apply for the exact same thing. Who decides who gets that money?
then it would probably in that case would be based on who submitted first.
I just didn't know if that had to go, like you saying first come,
No.
first served, basically, why wouldn't that go to the council and be like, okay,
And that's why we
This,
don't
this,
want to
this.
do that. We don't want it to go through a personal decision. We want it to be all pre-qualified, pre-laid out form. That way, there's no room for discrimination is the idea.
that's, yeah.
I don't wanna decide, because you've had enough of those.
That was just my question, because you might not like that person, and you're like, yeah, I'm not voting to do it.
So my goal is to give you the fairest chance possible and to take you off the hook as much as possible.
Okay, that was just my,
That sounds good to me.
And there's no guarantee from the village or anything like that? I mean, nothing that would obligate the village to...
If you do a project, you are obligated to pay for that project to be done. But that's why you do it on the front end, to make sure that they're all pre-qualified jobs, so that you're not doing unqualified work within the grant.
And
With the money that they give for the administrative part of it, we have to track all the receipts and completion and qualifying things, correct?
But what he's saying is if we get $100,000 and we spend $150,000, we unhook for 50. What he's saying is Sturgis said they'll take care of it until we get the money to pay him back.
And that's assuming we turn in no receipts at the time we spend $150,000.
So we're not gonna be unhooked for anything,
Are there
as
approved
long as you do it the right way.
contractors? That's what I was gonna ask, is there
So
approved
there
contractors?
would have to be approved contractors that have already gone through state
Vetting process.
expectations. And then there would also be a bidding process for that, as well as a bidding process for the admin.
There's no negative to it.
So the sooner that we act on this, the better off that we're going to be to get all that in the background. Go ahead.
Yeah, let's not wait like we always do.
Are a lot of the contractors already approved?
There are a lot of contractors that are already approved. At the local level, I've only talked to one that I know, and it depends on which projects you apply for too. If you do windows, which is a big one that's high on the list, they also have to be lead abatement certified. And so some of them aren't certified for that. And I'm actually working with the Sturgis Neighborhood Program to present a class. So any of our local builders who we encourage to try to do some of this, to go through that programming to make sure that they're also qualified to be able to get that work.
But it'll likely be the larger mechanical contractor outfits.
I do know in Kalamazoo County, it has been that way,
Yeah,
but at the same time, they have more than enough work.
cause you have to have 3 bids, right?
And so a lot of them aren't necessarily as eager to come down here.
We can't get people to bid on a $20 million sewer plant. One person, one company.
Okay, anyone else? You read the motion again, please?
King motion that we apply ASAP for the MSHDA Repair and Rehab SDG grant program.
And second by,
Second by, Steers.
okay. Any other questions from trustees? Okay, call roll, please.
Piper?
Yes.
M. Mathers?
Yes.
G. Mathers?
Yes.
Lawrence?
Yes.
King?
Yes.
Denman?
Yes.
Steers?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Thank you. And if anybody has any questions along the way, I'm more than happy to take those questions, whether it's a quick phone call, text, or meet for coffee and go over things more thoroughly. And I will make sure that I let Mark know and he has the stuff that I talked about. So if anybody wants that, you should be able to ask him, and I think I copied Crystal on it. So between the two of them, somebody should be able to get you anything we went over. And then if there's any follow-up, I'm certainly more than happy to help with those. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. You get a medium plus.
Do you have a business card?
I do.
So that concludes our agenda for tonight. So we'll close the meeting at 8:29 p.m.